What's up everyone? Welcome to another scary Reddit stories video. I'll read out 3 haunting stories that will leave you with no sleep tonight. Without wasting any more of your time, let's get straight into the story. I know how it sounds. Let me explain. My relationship with Miles used to be completely perfect. The day after our wedding, he drove us to his secluded cabin on the Pacific Coast Highway. Cabin is what he called it. I would have called it a mansion. A sleek little hideaway overlooking the ocean. The air was damp and cool, and we built a fire to chase away the chill. Outside, the waves crashed onto the rocks below. The cabin was truly the perfect romantic getaway, secluded and scenic. He poured me a glass of red wine, and we sat around the crackling logs late into the night. We'd had a picture-perfect whirlwind romance. I was working on the set of a new TV show as a wardrobe assistant. He was the charming actor playing a minor role. I worked grueling hours for low pay. He made the big bucks. It was all so unexpected when he took an interest in me, but it wasn't like I was unattractive. No, everyone agreed we made a lovely couple. Even my parents, whom he charmed immediately with his down-to-earth sensibilities. Our wedding was the most incredible day. All of my childhood expectations were exceeded. The custom wedding dress, the $10,000 cake, the natural setting with 200 of my closest friends and relatives, the endlessly blue, cloudless sky. My friends all said the pictures would be gorgeous, that we were a perfect couple, that the day was something out of a fairy tale. That was the happiest day of my life. I had everything I ever wanted. Miles was the whole package, smart, handsome, rich. And he was finally mine, or so I thought. Little did I know that after the wedding, the happiness would fade. I think he thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't say anything, wouldn't complain. That is, when I finally noticed he was cheating, running around with other women. Which is what he's doing right now. Miles thinks the house is empty, but I'm here. I never leave. I can hear them up there. Footsteps across the floor. A muted giggle. That would be his new girlfriend, I presume. She's probably wowed by this place like I was. And Miles himself, of course. But there's a sight I'd like to show her that's more impressive than the ocean view. It's me, all chopped up in the downstairs freezer. You see, Miles didn't like that I figured out his little secret. He liked it less that I confronted him about it. And when I tried to pack my bags and slip out one evening, he cornered me in the garage. He'd been watching me on the security cameras all along. I hadn't even realized they were there. Miles thought he was done with me. He'd solved his problem, at least temporarily. Except, I'm still here. It's hard to haunt when you're wrapped up in plastic. But so far, I've successfully scared 2 other women away from this place before anything bad happened to them. Turns out whispering, "Get out," into someone's ear as they lay by the pool is pretty freaky enough to make them leave. I want to warn the girl upstairs too. She's not safe, because he's not done. I get the feeling I wasn't the first kill. It seemed too natural, too practiced. That knife just slid in too easily for it to be impulse. I think there might be more of us down here. Unfortunately, I only have finite energy left in my ghost form. Speaking, even whispering takes a lot. It's taking all the energy I have left to haunt the computer Miles keeps down here, sliding along the passive Ethernet cables into the wide world of the internet, where I've come to plead for help. So please, is there anyone out who could come save her? Reflect Orbita was a new groundbreaking tech company that sold daylight during the night. Go ahead and Google it and see for yourselves. They aimed to reflect the sun's rays over solar panels down here on the Earth's surface, well after it had gone dark to maximize the sun's energy output. At first, it sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie, but my jaw dropped when I Googled their website, and everything about them seemed legit. Ordering sunlight was as simple as ordering an Uber. I typed in my exact coordinates, and like magic, everything around me lit up. I was even more amazed when I looked up, and above me was a ball of shining light in the night sky. The Reflect Orbital app also came with a cool feature that allowed you to run your finger over a map of your location, allowing you to move the light around. I lived on a farm in a rural part of the country, which lacked the orange glow of artificial light that lit up city streets. The only benefit of it being pitch black was seeing the stars in all their amazing glory on a clear night. Having acres of space meant I had room for solar panels, which is great during the summer, but in the winter when the days are short and gloomy, solar panels aren't worth shit. So having the ability to have bright natural light beamed from space seemed almost too good to be true. I wasn't expecting much, but I was more than surprised when the energy output of the solar panels was twice what you would get after a week's worth of natural light. It was as if they were juiced up with steroids, giving me enough energy to get us through 2 weeks of winter nights. "Stephen, come quick, you need to see this," called my wife, her voice beckoning me from the fields. My wife, Susan, stood in the cornfield, pointing to the sprouts of green poking up through the freshly sowed cornfield. "Should they be sprouting this quickly?" asked my wife in a bewildered tone. I was as puzzled as she was. I had only sowed the field 2 days ago, and already the field was awash with green. I had a feeling the light I had beamed down from space had something to do with the miraculous growth of the corn, so I figured another night of sunshine wouldn't hurt. I used the app to focus the light on the field. As it basked in the warm rays of light, my wife's eyes fixated on the orange glow from the ball of light in the sky. She seemed mesmerized by the intensity of its warmth and lost in its heavenly glow. "Are you still with us?" I asked jokingly. As she stood there in silence, staring up at the sky, I noticed something strange. The shadow her body cast seemed to twist and morph into grotesque shapes, whereas I didn't seem to cast any shadow at all. The next morning, when I went to check on the fields, I couldn't believe my eyes. The corn stood 12 feet high from seed to harvest in just over 2 days. My delight was soon shattered by the sight of the corn. The ears that held the yellow kernels were deformed, even monstrous, and didn't look like your average corn on the cobs. I pulled one off the stalk and bit into it. The putrid taste assaulted my senses, causing me to throw up. The whole field of corn was affected. Nothing could be salvaged, meaning I would have to start over again. I spent the night tossing and turning, and when I finally drifted off, I was suddenly jolted from my sleep to find my wife's side of the bed empty. My phone was missing, and a bright light seeped through the cracks of the curtains. I went to the window and pulled back the curtains. It was 3 a.m., and it was as bright as a summer's day. My eyes were drawn to the edge of the cornfield where my wife was standing with her arms held high, as if she were at Sunday Mass. "Susan, what are you doing out here?" I asked. She was too transfixed in the light to even notice me. It was like I didn't even exist. Suddenly, her face turned to mine. Her eyes were black, and her face twisted. "Can you hear it? It's calling to me," she said with a hollow voice, before running off and disappearing into the cornfield. I tried following her, but she moved fast like a wild animal. Eventually, I ran out of steam and was too tired to keep up, but she just kept on running, as if she had an abundance of energy. After a long day of searching for her, I headed back to the house before it got dark. I prayed she saw sense, and she would be back home waiting for me. When I made it back, the house was empty. My wife was my world. We had no kids, so all we had was each other. Knowing she was out there alone was killing me. Too restless to sleep, I sat on the back porch, hoping she would find her way back. I wanted my face to be the first one she saw, so she knew she wasn't lost. As I sat there looking out into the darkness of the fields, I noticed the faint sound of rustling that grew louder as it got closer. I stood there trembling as a group of glowing red eyes appeared from the darkness. The glowing seemed to surround the house, as if moving in for an attack. At first, I thought it was wild animals, so I flicked on the floodlights, hoping it would spook them. The creatures were startled for a moment, but they kept on coming. Leading the group was my wife, but not as I knew her. The light seemed to have affected more than just my wife. People I once called friends, along with other people from the town, had transformed into terrifying creatures. Before I knew it, I was surrounded with nowhere to go. I backed cautiously into the house and barricaded the door, hoping to buy myself some time before my inevitable death. As I looked around the house looking for something to protect myself, I came across my phone. My only hope was giving them what they wanted, so I opened the Reflect Orbital app and pressed on my coordinates. The night sky lit up and everything went silent. I looked out the window and the creatures had stopped dead in their tracks. They were now fixated on the ball of light in the sky. They stood just like my wife before, with their hands held up to the heavens. I wasn't sure if the police were the right people to call, so I rang the number on the Reflect Orbital app. After I explained my predicament, within an hour, a fleet of Reflect Orbital vans and trucks descended on the farm and began rounding up all the creatures, along with my wife. A guy in a suit approached me and introduced himself as a representative for the company. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded. The representative pulled out a stack of papers. Being a new company, we had some unforeseen consequences. The reflectors on our satellites reflect more than just the sun's energy. "What does that even mean?" I said, as the anger in me began to boil over. "Apparently, our reflectors reflect light from other parts of the universe, places we know nothing about." "What about my wife?" I asked. "Your wife will be fine in about a month or two. We will get her back to you after you sign these NDAs." To get my wife back, I would have signed my soul away, so I signed whatever he wanted me to. Before he left, I had one more question. Why wasn't I affected by the light? The representative shot me an empathetic look. "In our studies, we noticed people with cancer weren't affected. We don't know why it happens, but you should go get it looked at. At least you will catch it early." I'm not sure if this is the best place to post this. There will probably be a lot of YTA comments, but let me be a cautionary tale against being a good Samaritan and helping strangers with luggage. And while I know my actions will probably disgust a lot of people, before you criticize, I want you to think, really think, if you do any different than me. So, I was at airport baggage claim when a woman asked me to watch her bag. "Promise you'll keep this for me until I get back?" she said. I promised her I'd look after it, laughing a little because she seemed so anxious, as if she was worried I'd abandon it and leave it for someone to steal. The woman thanked me profusely and left, presumably to pee, I thought, given how quick she went. She never came back. The bag had no tag and no name, just a ribbon tied on the handle. I kept it with me and waited a whole half hour for her return, but after 45 minutes, well, this was ridiculous. I left the suitcase with the rest of the unclaimed luggage, figuring it would find its way to her eventually. I was wrong. When I got home, the suitcase was there in the entryway. I stared as I closed the front door behind me. Weird, right? How did it get here? Vague thoughts flitted through my head that the airport somehow delivered it. Maybe they saw me sitting with it and assumed it was mine. The suitcase was a dark gray green, one of those big clamshell ones with sturdy fabric around the zipper, a lacy ribbon tied on the handle, and no labels at all. Not even a flight barcode sticker. Next day, I returned it to the airport, but when I got home, it was back in my house, in my bedroom, stationed beside my other luggage that I'd yet to unpack. This was getting disturbing. Who'd brought it back here? How did they know where I lived? If this was a prank, it had gone too far. I grabbed the suitcase and wheeled it out to the dumpster in the alley and tossed it in. But a few hours later, it was back. By then, I'd unpacked from my trip, and my own luggage was deep in my closet. The green suitcase was just sitting there, as if waiting to be unpacked also. I drove it out to a dumpster across town. It was back when I got home. I took it to Goodwill and donated it, but it returned again. Each time it got back, it felt heavier. As the days passed, I started having nightmares about the suitcase. I'd close my eyes, and as soon as I was asleep, I'd feel the clamshell around me as if I were all folded into it, my limbs scrunched, my lungs suffocating. I'd try to breathe, but the air was stale and I was smothered. Finally, I'd panic and wake up and see the suitcase in my room. In addition to getting heavier, it was also getting stinkier. At first, I thought it was from being thrown into the dumpster, but no. This was a different odor, and it got worse over time. It reeked like someone had hunted a deer and packed it in there and left it. And it leaked, a sort of foul dark liquid that dripped into the carpet and left a stain. I decided to change tactics and video the suitcase in hopes of catching whoever kept returning it to me. My parents had a pet cam for their dogs, so I asked them to take care of the suitcase for me, and I made sure to place it in their living room in sight of the camera so that when it disappeared, I'd be able to pinpoint how and when. A day passed. 2. When I checked the footage of my parents' pet cam, the suitcase was still there. Then they called me up. Would I take my suitcase back? It was taking up space and stinking up their living room. I retrieved the suitcase and back at home, put it in the garage and installed a camera to monitor it. It stayed in the garage, thank goodness, because the smell was truly god-awful. But my dreams got even more disturbing. In the latest one, I wasn't able to move at all. I could feel my skin beginning to slough off, my eyes melting in my head, maggots crawling through my rotting flesh. When I woke up, it took me a few moments to blink bleary eyes and realize where I was. I was standing in the door to the garage, sleepwalking, apparently. On my way toward the suitcase, a sudden dread seized me. I was afraid to go near it, to even touch it, certain that if I unzipped it, I'd wind up inside. I rented a hotel room, but of course it followed me there. At work, my boss swung by my desk to ask if everything was all right. She'd noticed my declining mental state. I broke down and I confessed everything. She asked me what was in the suitcase. I don't know, I stammered. It's not mine. I never looked. You never even looked? She seemed stunned. Isn't that the first thing you should have done? It seemed logical when she said it, but right now, even the idea of opening it all but suffocated me with dread. She said she'd like to see this mysterious suitcase and asked me to show her after work. We drove together to my hotel room. On the way, she theorized what might be in there. Was I being framed? Was there a body? I should have called the police right away, she said. Or was it something more mundane? Maybe someone bought me a frozen turkey and it had thawed and was becoming nasty. Maybe a family member was pranking me. Could be anything, and I'd know already if I'd opened the thing. My leaving the mystery for so many days seemed ridiculous to her. I had to agree, but nothing in the world would make me touch that zipper. The suitcase was there, waiting right by the door when we walked in, just tucked to one side like it was ready for me to open it. The entire room stank. My boss wrinkled her nose, and even she looked a little hesitant. She told me to open it, but I shook my head and made a noise in my throat, and she sighed and rolled her eyes and said, "All right, shut the door. We don't want anyone walking by to see." She rolled it into the bathroom in case it was messy and said she'd just open a little, take a peek. "Where did you say it came from again?" she asked as she tugged on the zipper. I backed away, sitting on one of the beds, so there was some distance between me and the bathroom. I couldn't see her anymore, but I just didn't want to be near when she unzipped it. "Someone at the airport asked me to watch it," I said. Actually, it's funny. The only time it didn't return was when I asked my parents to look after it. It stayed put for a couple of days. I wonder if... I stopped because why wasn't she saying anything? "Are you looking inside?" I called. Silence. Dread swirled in my belly. All my limbs felt leaden. I called out again. "Did you unzip it? Did you peek inside yet?" A faint muffled sound. The fear was a stone in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then I heard again what seemed like a smothered cry. I rushed to the bathroom and gasped. The tip of a polished loafer sank into the suitcase, which bulged and trembled, and then the shoe was gone and the zipper was like lips smacking shut. The suitcase sat, just a suitcase. After that, I took the suitcase with me to the bus and train terminal downtown. It was now lightweight, with a slight musty smell. I surveyed the station. There was a woman with small children, a father with a teenager in tow. And then I spotted a leathery-faced man in a bucket hat sitting alone on one of the metal chairs, looking a bit worse for wear. I approached him and sat next to him, pretending to read for a few moments, and then I turned to him. "Excuse me, sir," I said. "Would you mind watching my bag for me for a bit?" He looked up at me, surprised, but mumbled, "Sure." "You won't leave it sitting here, will you? Promise me you'll hold on to it until I get back?" I insisted. "Yeah, sure, no biggie." "Thanks a million," I told him. Then I left. I haven't been back. I'm under investigation for my boss's disappearance since she was last seen in my car. But the nightmares have stopped. The smell is gone. You probably think I'm terrible. But ask yourself honestly, what would you have done in my situation? I have to issue this warning so that I can prevent others from suffering the same experience. If someone asks you to watch their bag, don't do it. No matter how much social etiquette compels you to smile and agree, make an excuse and leave. Let people look after their own luggage. I know I'm never watching anyone's bag again. Anyway, that's the end of this story. If you made it up to here, thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more stories like this one.